My husband and I have 6 children and live in a 4-bedroom home. As you can imagine, space is tight. My husband and I have one room, the 2 eldest share, the middle 2 share, and the youngest 2 share. This question pertains to my eldest 18 female. She recently started university in September and moved to live in student accommodation there. So she kept her weekend job here and planned to travel in and stay here on Friday night and leave to go back to university on Sunday after work. She's looking for a job closer to her university but hasn't found one that pays as well as her current one. When she left, I told our second oldest 16 female that the room was now hers alone. We sold my eldest bed and wardrobe and drawers to make more space, and instructed my second eldest to leave one drawer free for the eldest to put her belongings when she returned for her weekends. When eldest returned on her first weekend back, she asked what happened to her bed and wardrobe, and I explained the above and that she doesn't live here anymore, so she doesn't need it at all. We provided her with a camp bed to sleep in the room with that she could fold up and store when she left. She was unhappy and went to bed. Later that night, I checked her Twitter and she had tweeted, "I feel like I don't have a home anymore," with a sad face. I was furious that she brought our family business into social media and woke her up to tell her so. We argued and I ultimately told her that if she doesn't feel like this is her home anymore, then she needs to leave and get out of my house. She did, and my husband was able to find out that she made the last train back to her university town that evening. The following Friday, she messaged me to say, very bluntly, "I'm sorry for tweeting about how I felt. I won't do it again." She has also either deleted her Twitter account or changed her account name and blocked me, so I can't verify if she'll stick to this. However, I told her that I forgave her and that she's welcome to return again. She's not returned home since that weekend. Throughout the entirety of the month, she didn't come home once and has been instead traveling to and from work both Saturday and Sunday instead of coming to our home. I messaged to ask her when break begins to find out when she was returning, and she said that her flatmate's parents have told her that she can spend the break with them. That's what she'll be doing. Was I really wrong in how I dealt with this? That I've pushed my daughter away? My husband thinks so, and so does my second eldest, but I believe that I handled it well. Perhaps I shouldn't have told her to leave, but does that warrant her abandoning her family? Am I in the wrong for telling my daughter to leave for embarrassing me on social media? My best friend, 31 male, and I, 27 male, have a tradition of taking a yearly weekend trip together that's phone free. We've been doing this for over a decade now. These weekend trips consist of us staying in a suite and exploring the city, not traversing the wilderness, so it's not like we're completely disconnected. Still, we like to keep one on hand for navigation and emergency purposes, and it would usually be friend's phone that we brought along. Fred and I left our trip 2 Fridays ago to make use of the long weekend. This was the first time I've gone on one of these trips since my wife and I moved in together, got engaged, or got married. However, we were dating for the last 2 years worth of trips, 2021 and 2022, and she seemed fine during that time. I would just tell her that I was going to be busy for the weekend and she'd leave me alone. I understand there are different expectations once you get married, but I didn't expect for the 180 in behavior. My wife all but demanded I take my phone as well in case she needed to get a hold of me, despite her having friend's number. I let her know I had arrived, and immediately after, she was texting me and asking me how things were. Then again, asking me another question when I didn't respond to the first one. I eventually muted our text conversation because I was sick of the phone buzzing. She called me a few hours later and asked why I wasn't responding to her texts. I reiterated that this was supposed to be a no-phone weekend and kept the call short despite her trying to drag out the conversation. She called me once more after this. When I answered the phone and found out it wasn't an emergency, I simply turned my phone off. The calls then started coming in from my friend and he followed suit. We spent the rest of the weekend with our phones off until the drive back on Monday. I called my wife and informed her when we were 30 minutes away from my place, and she was furious. She said that there ended up being an emergency. Her sister got into a car accident that won't affect her long term, but still resulted in broken bones, and that I had just ignored her the entire time when she needed me. I told her that I was very sorry about her sister, but it wasn't my fault. She had essentially forced my hand into cutting off means of communication. She went to stay with a friend before I arrived home that night and has since came home, but she's still fuming. So, am I in the wrong for missing an actual emergency because I turned my phone off to avoid my wife's unnecessary contact attempts during my tech-free weekend? I, female 27, have been married to my wonderful husband, male 30, for 5 years, but we've been together for 7 years total. In all that time, my parents, female 58 and male 60, have never really taken a shining to him, but everyone has always been amicable. That is, everyone except my sister, female 22, who seems to think that the world revolves around her. She is the light of my parents' lives, and can do absolutely no wrong in their eyes. Simply put, my husband and I generally keep our distance from her. Last weekend was my dad's 60th birthday, and everyone was invited. My husband and I went knowing that my sister would be there, but we didn't think too much of it. We expected a pleasant evening celebrating my dad. Now it's important to note before we go further that my husband follows certain dietary restrictions as part of his religion, which I'm keeping vague, but everyone in the family knows and has been accommodating thus far. Unfortunately, after everyone had eaten dinner, my sister announced that she had specifically asked the caterers to add in some of the restricted food items so that she could test if my husband would even know the difference. To say the least, I was furious. Just for clarification purposes, the restricted ingredients were added into the sauces and there were no noticeable pieces. My husband and I were absolutely appalled and just walked out while my sister yelled that she didn't get the big deal and we need to take the sticks out of our butts. My parents had absolutely nothing to say and just watched. They later texted me that I should consider the fact that my sister is young and didn't know better. I did not respond. I went absolutely no contact with everyone since the party and didn't respond to a single message or phone call, nor did my husband. When my parents showed up at the house, we didn't open the door. When they showed up at my work, I didn't go to reception. I haven't laid eyes on them at all. Today, some cops came knocking on my door saying that they had received a missing persons report and were looking for me. Fortunately, that was all solved quickly in that I never actually went missing. But now my friends are saying that I wasted police resources when I could have just texted my parents back saying that I didn't want to hear from them. I just feel like a grown woman should not have to justify where she is to her parents. So, am I in the wrong for disappearing and causing my parents to lodge a missing persons report? My fiancé left me after he found out about my college days. I've been with my fiancé for 2 years, engaged for 2 months. I can go on and on about how great he is, but I won't waste your time. He's awesome. Him and my sister's boyfriend have gotten really close over the past year, and they talk at least twice a week, whether on the phone or FaceTime or just hanging out with all four of us. Sister has been dating her boyfriend since high school, so obviously her boyfriend knows me very well, as well as my dating history. Last weekend, we all thought it would be fun to drink and hang out over FaceTime. It was a FaceTime double date and we all had a blast. Laughing, playing drinking games. We all partied for over an hour, and that's when I was over it and decided to leave the party to call my sister directly without the boys in the other room. Well, my fiancé and her boyfriend stayed on the FaceTime and continued to get drunk together. During this time, I couldn't hear shit because I was in another room and was talking to my sister. Sister's boyfriend goes and tells a bunch of stories about my college days and how many guys I hooked up with. Just so everyone knows, I don't know the actual number. My first 3 years of college was literally one giant party. Without being too descriptive, I admit I was excessive. But at that time, it was just what we did. I was single during that time, and me and my friends with a lot of guys. Most of them that I couldn't even pick out in a lineup. But again, I was in college. Anyway, one of the parties that I went to, I ended up hooking with 4 different guys at the same time. This is relevant later. My fiancé is handsome as fuck, and I know for a fact that he's been with several women. We talked about our past a lot in the beginning of the relationship. I wasn't 100% honest with mine, and I can only assume that he was. After everyone hung up, me and my fiancé were laying in bed about to sleep when he just calmly asked me, "Did you get gangbanged in college?" My response was, "What the fuck? Why would you ask that?" That's when he told me everything that my sister's boyfriend told him. He told me details I'm not even sure are 100% true because, again, blur. But a lot of that information was accurate, so I just told him yes. It was one time. He continued asking questions about other stuff, but the gangbang thing kept coming up, and he had a lot of questions about it that I answered to the best of my knowledge. Fast forward to Wednesday. Things have been fine and normal Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But on Wednesday, radio silence. He hasn't texted or talked to me in 3 days. The breaking point was tonight when he came home from work and asked me, "Are you friends with any of the guys on Facebook?" Again, not lying to him, I admitted yes, I was friends with all of them. He left a few hours ago and I have no idea where he is or what he's doing. I'm tempted to call the cops, but I feel like I will just make things worse. I feel like garbage. I fucking hate my sister's boyfriend right now, but maybe it's not even his fault. Maybe I should have been more honest. I'm so lost. He's the best thing to ever happen to me and I've never seen him like this before. Is this the end? He refuses to return my calls and texts.
I'm ghosting all of my friends and I can't wait. Back home, I had a really close friendship with all of my friends. At least I thought so. We would hang out fairly often and we would have so much fun together. We would talk pretty much every day and things were great. Then I moved to a different state and everything changed. My friends barely spoke to me. I was usually the one starting conversations and calling them. They rarely answered. When they did, it's more often than not no longer than 10 to 15-minute call, and if I text them, chances are they won't answer for days. I've brought this up to my closest friend and they've apologized and said they do better, and they did for a little, but then things went back to the way they were. I've brought this up to my closest friend and they've apologized and said they do better, and they did for a little, but then things went back to the way they were before, unsurprisingly. This friend has a tendency to only call me when life is going wrong for them or when they need advice about their problems, but when life is going wrong for me, they never answer and just aren't there when I need them. Now, I understand life happens and I'm not going to claim I'm the world's best friend, but I'd like to think that I'm an okay friend. I answer the moment they call or text no matter what I'm doing. I drop everything I'm doing and stay on the phone with them for hours when they're sad or need me. I always check in and make sure they're okay, and they always say I'm their go-to for advice, so I think I'm doing an okay job. But for some reason, I just don't get that in return. Recently, something happened in my life, and while it's not earth-shatteringly major, all of my friends have been MIA, and have only spoken to me when I've called them about it, and they miraculously answer. I even have one friend who I tried to tell about it. I called and texted, and they didn't answer, but when I called another friend a few days later, they were hanging out together that night. And for some reason, that moment absolutely shattered my heart. The way they've been recently has made me realize that they don't really value our friendships very much, and my partner mentioned the same thing when I broke down to them about it. After that breakdown, I made the choice to just not call or text any of my friends to see if they even notice. So far, they have not, and now I've made the choice to ghost them all. No warning, no reasoning, no apologies, just poof, and I absolutely cannot wait. Am I wrong for letting my stepdaughter spend a night in jail instead of bailing her out right away? My wife, 38 female, and I, 39 male, have been married for 6 years. We have 2 kids, 8 and 5. My wife also has a daughter, Mary, 18, from before we got together. Mary is in her senior year of high school and lives with us. She will go see her bio dad 2 weekends a month, but due to her extracurricular activities, it is not always an every other weekend thing. Since bio dad lives about 2 hours away, Mary works out times with her dad for her to visit him, and she drives herself there. This past weekend, my wife took our 2 younger kids to visit her sister who lives about 3 hours away. Before my wife left, Mary told us that she was going to visit her dad that weekend. I was going to stay home to get some work done on some home projects that had been neglected over the holidays. So on Friday, after everyone else had left, I kicked back and took advantage of the very rare opportunity of having an empty house to myself. I bought a nice bottle of bourbon, visited our local dispensary, and bought myself a nice steak. About 3 a.m., I was awoken by a phone call. Any parent knows that a phone call at that time of night is a nightmare situation. So I immediately answered. It was my wife, and she told me that Mary had been arrested and had just been called from our local jail. Apparently, she lied about going to her dad's house and had instead attended a party. The party got busted, and Mary panicked and tried to run. Of course, the cops caught her and arrested her. My wife said that the police would allow me to go get Mary right away instead of keeping her in jail. I told my wife that I had been drinking earlier and was probably not safe to drive, let alone drive to a police station. I told her that I would pick Mary up first thing in the morning. My wife yelled at me for being irresponsible by drinking to that point in case of an emergency. I told her that I was home by myself and everyone else in the family was supposed to be hours away, so I essentially had zero responsibility for anyone besides myself. She eventually calmed down enough to see my side. The next morning, I went and got Mary right when I woke up. When I saw her, it was obvious she had been crying a lot and she didn't say a word to me on the way home. She immediately went to her room when we got home and didn't come out the entire day. The next day, when my wife got home, Mary was still in her room. My wife talked to her and then came to talk to me. She told me that both her and Mary are disappointed in me that I made her spend a night in jail instead of getting her right away. She said that Mary is traumatized by the whole thing. I told her, good, maybe next time she won't lie and do stupid shit. I agree. I'm sorry. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Hello, you lied. The consequences of your actions. Hello. I reminded her that Mary is an adult now and she has to get used to facing consequences of her actions, and this should be a very clear reminder of what those consequences could be. What did I say? My wife said that that lesson could have been made without making her spend a night in jail.